Here we go with another episode of Rethink Real Estate. And on today's episode, we have our second appearance from Mark Johnson. Mark is the managing partner for Recruitment Insights. We talk about agent transition within the real estate industry. Definitely an interesting couple of months. We're filming this one in October, so we're making sure that it comes out in a relatively short time frame so that the information is relevant. We talk about 2025 outlook. We talk about industry trends and what some of the bigger companies are doing also out there. But again, really great to have Mark back on. He can definitely keep his finger on the pulse when it comes to the recruiting side of the business, but hopefully the episode helps. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Mark, welcome back to Rethink Real Estate.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me back. I really, have a lot of respect for you and what you're doing, and congratulations on your success.
Thank you, mate. Well, again, it's always good to have a friend of the podcast come back, certainly when it comes to such an interesting topic when we're diving into the recruitment of agents with inside, the real estate industry. And that's whether or not you're a broker, whether or not you're somebody that has their own business, whether or not it's a factor of that you're trying to grow a team. The topic that we've got you here today to talk about is always relevant, because I think that if you ever stop recruiting, your business dies, yeah?
It does, because, just think about it. Birth, death, divorce, relocation. There's always movement. And so if you're not growing, you're dying. Yeah. And I'd love if we could work in, I know we have a limited amount of time, but recruiting and attraction are really two different things. And a lot of people in your audience get them confused, and they're really different, and they require different strategies and tactics.
Well, I'd like to go for a little bit of clickbait first, if that's okay with you, just to make sure that we can get people to stick around. Because, and again, that might be something that we dive into after this, because recruiting and attraction, two different things. Definitely one of the topics that I want to dive into today. But curious to understand your take on this, as you informed me that August was the lowest month for turnover in 5 years.
Yeah, lowest month tracked by Realytics, and lowest month of turnover in 5 years. If you think about the 80-20 rule, we forget that recruiting is the long game, but what happened to us in August? The entire industry changed, right? And so people were paralyzed around, okay, on August the 17th, is the world going to end? And as we know now, it didn't.
Do you remember, Mark, Y2K?
Yes.
Yeah, kind of like that in the real estate industry, yeah.
It was exactly that. So everyone wasn't moving, or they were waiting to see. And as you and I know as servant leaders, typically nothing good happens when you wait. But so there were a lot of distractions. And, I think of distractions as protecting your most prized real estate of attention has to be a priority, whether you're an agent or a manager or a leader or wherever you are. Distractions are a big part that take us away from the recruiting and attraction game.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that one of the notes that you'd put down on some of the stuff that we were talking about, I thought it was a really interesting point, is that the reason for it being such low turnover was primarily based on the fact that agents had to re-engage with their company, correct?
They had to. Think about it. Because of all the changes, whether you're a servant leader, an autocratic leader, or a laissez-faire, apathetic leader, either one of those, you had to engage. One, because your agents were demanding it, and two, there were so many changes. You had to get engaged with your agents.
Yeah.
And I think just the fact of building communication, connections, it's funny, I was talking to an agent the other day who said, Mark, the only thing that's changed is we're talking a lot more. And I thought, wow, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that there's a part of this also that, again, driving that level of attraction, driving that level of communication to keep agents engaged is obviously just then a proof in the concept of what you need to do on a daily basis in order to get them engaged. Because, there's another part of this that I'm pretty interested in as well, in some of the work that you and your team have been doing from a panel of high performing agents, the things that are the most important to them. One of the first ones was broker support. And do you know what? I don't know. There's a part of me that believes there's a part of me that doesn't believe that broker support is the most important thing anymore, primarily probably because of these agencies that are at play at the moment, of the Reals and the EXPs and things along those lines, those such independent agencies. But clearly, you guys have, found that is probably one of the more wanted attributes. Is that right?
Yeah, I pulled together a panel of 5 agents who had recently made a move, and we probed them on what were their considerations, what did they look at, what did they, what was up here in their head that as managers, leaders, and recruiters we may not get out.
Yeah.
And I would submit even some of the brands that you mentioned, they're just doing broker support in a different way.
Yep.
There's still, when you peel back the onion, they still have to have someone who's their go-to person. And when they have that person, they're sticky. And when they don't, they have turnover just like everyone else. So what we found as I was drawing out of them what went on in their head, the number one thing was broker support. Can I get support when I need it? Is there someone there who can guide me through issues that I either need confirmation?
Mm-hmm.
So many of us as agents kind of know the right answer, but we need someone to confirm it.
Yep.
So they want that. Or if it's, new to them, that someone can give them the right direction. Then tech stack and training came into play. We all have tech stacks, we all have training, but they want to know that that's at least, at par or above, who they're considering. And then what I thought was interesting, what came in kind of third, was culture and leadership.
Yeah.
Is the leader of this company, office, downline, upline, whatever it is the leader of this thing someone I can respect and be proud that I'm associated with? And then finally, the perception of onboarding. They all know that onboarding is going to be challenging, but is it going to be like a total pain in the ass, or is it going to be at least somewhat? Then fees came in. And it wasn't that fees weren't important, but it said, hey, if these other things aren't in place, doesn't matter what fees you have, I took you out of my consideration. So it was fascinating for us to learn and hear actually from agents who made a move and what went through their heads.
Can I dive into a couple of those with you and get your thoughts on them? Because
yes,
there's a part of this that, and again, this might be me looking at things a little bit differently in the sense that maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. I often find, let's put ourselves in a situation when you sell real estate.
Mm-hmm.
You go into what I would hope to think most of the time is somebody that you don't have a deep-seated relationship with. You might have a referral relationship with them. You might have a relationship where, you might have done one transaction with them or a family member or something along those lines. You're sitting in that person's living room and you're pitching them on why they should use you to sell their home. Agents are so surprised when the seller doesn't tell them their full financial problems or the real reason of them selling up front. And I often say to them is that, you need to understand the fact that you are technically a perfectly good stranger that they're not going to bleed their heart to in the very beginning. Some people will. There's a small percentage of people that absolutely will be like, hey, I'm selling because I'm in financial disrepair, okay, or I owe this much money or whatever it may look like. There is a small percentage of that, but generally what I've found is that you won't find the true motivation for somebody selling until you're 2 or so weeks in or you reach a moment of friction, right? I often think that brokers are the same way or agents are the same way. When you have a conversation with people from a recruitment perspective, which is what we do every day, as a company, we try to have those types of conversations every day, is that it's funny. I often don't find that agents will bring up the split immediately. Now, again, there's a small portion of them that will, but most of them won't because I think they think it would reflect poorly on them. Do you buy into that or not?
Yeah, I do somewhat. Here's what I know. The best recruiters and attractors are the best conversationalists. And they know, I forget who said this quote, I think it was Tony Robbins, ask a better question, get a better answer. So the best managers, leaders, and recruiters know how to get their prospects to what I call self-activate through proper questioning. Mm-hmm. Ben, one of them would be, well, how could your current broker better support your growth? That's a question that's non-judgmental, doesn't put the other broker up or down. It says, hey, how could your current broker better support your growth? And it draws them out. Well, what they could do is blah, 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 blah. Now you're uncovering what potentially the true factor is. So there's a series of questions that can get candidates to self-activate. And when you master those, recruiting and attraction becomes a whole different game.
There's another part of it as well, is that what people think they want out of a brokerage as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like you said, is that it's got to lead to better questioning, because I know 100% like this is one of the things that many people want to understand what the tech stack is and what the training looks like. But I know from running a business in real estate, I know from knowing pretty intimately one of the largest real estate companies in all of the US, the volume of money that is spent on those both things, but the lack of engagement they get. Like, I know, again, and the company will remain nameless, but they probably spent the most money that I've ever heard of on their tech suite, and they have something like a 12% engagement level.
10 or 10% use it or so. One thing, when I was active in brokerage leadership, I did a survey every quarter. What are we doing well? What could we do better? Would you refer us to someone? And anything else you want to tell me? Mm-hmm. And one of the agents came in and said, well, I wish you would literally provide lunch in the office every day. And I thought, they may think that's part of being a good broker or being a servant leader. But it was like, well, how does that make sense? Yeah. Let's think of this from a business perspective and, whatever. And I found the survey, even though it brought up some great ideas and it brought up some bad ideas, at least it got me in conversation with the agent at a more meaningful level. So I'm a big fan of surveys too.
There's a part of this also that you mentioned in the very beginning about the recruitment and the attraction. I want to lean into that now as we're talking about things that, that might be attractive to agents. What is the difference between recruitment and attracting?
Well, think about it for a minute. Recruiting is kind of really going out and in a sense, what I would use the word hunting. Right? We're going to hunt for people that are most likely going to fit our model, maybe our ideal agent. Where attraction, they come to us, and maybe we do that through events that we hold that we're going to do for our own agents anyway, that's retention based, that we can invite people to. There's a psychological principle, Ben, that I know you're aware of, called the psychology of fit, or their perception of fit. People have to feel like they fit in there. Oh, I belong there. And the only way they can do that is to engage in your culture. So the attraction events, whether they're through Zoom, whether they're in person, allow them to see your culture and say, oh, maybe there's a brighter future there than where I'm at. Where recruiting is kind of, basically, knocking on the doors, right?
Yeah.
So I look at it that way. There's a lot of resources out there. If any of your listeners want a few, we have a few resources on how to, do a facilitated, guided quarterly business review or a guided facilitated goal setting workshop. These are the things that allow agents to see you as a leader, what you're like, what your culture's like, and they can see themselves being part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I think that culture is a dirty word though for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Like it's it's one of those words that I used to, for a very long time, used to think that it was just a word that people would use when they had no tangible value. But it is something that is, culture by default versus culture by design are two very, very different things.
Two very different things. And when you think about it, everybody has some type of culture.
Yeah.
And I go back to the types of leadership. Why I think August was so low, everyone was forced to engage and have conversations with their agent. But old habits are going to come back. And the servant leaders like you and I are still going to thrive on engagement and serve and see how we can make things better. The autocratic leader is going to go back to, just do what I say. And maybe the most scariest leader, the laissez-faire or apathetic leader, is, just checked out. Leaders are going to go back to their comfort zone after all the changes. And I think we're going to see the movement come back up and go to normal seasonality.
So some of the best people from a retention perspective in the company, in the industry that you get to work with or you get to see, what are the three key things from a retention perspective? Now, again, I want people to think about this a little more laterally, Mark, than just a brokerage. I just want them to think about their team. I want them to think about, because at the end of the day, good management is good management regardless.
servant leadership and good management. I would say there's one thing, and we can come up with three, but the one thing is that the people that we're working with that have the highest retention are closer to their people.
Right.
However close you are to your team, your staff, your agents, your network of people in your company, get one step closer. I know some leaders who have on their wall their top 10 agents and their staff. They have their business goals and their personal goals underneath a picture of them.
Mm.
So whenever they're having a conversation, well, hey Ben, how's that? I know you're into weightlifting or weight loss, or you started a sailing club, or whatever. They can relate, and they get closer and closer and closer to their people. That's the number one distinction I see between the ones who are having great success and those that are struggling.
Confirmation bias is something that really plagues, I think, brokers and team leaders, because, Mark, you've been doing this long enough. I've been doing it long enough that some of the closest people that I've ever had within the company have still shat on me eventually. And, the reality is that it really does, you do lose a lot of faith in humanity within this business.
It hurts. It hurts when you think you've done all the right things and someone, either takes money from a competitor or whatever reason. I had one who, took the money and said, well, I'll be back in 2 years, but it still hurts. What I found the hard way, and I had to work through this, is I just can't take it personal. I just can't take it personal, even though I pour my heart out, a servant leader, do everything I can. Some people are just going to, like you say, poop, fly in, poop, and off they go.
Yeah.
But that's not going to stop me from building my vision, from building where I want to go. I think Mother Teresa said it best, do it anyway. You're going to have all these terrible things happen to you, but do it anyway, because your vision is bigger than what one person can bring you down. Ben, I was thinking this work of recruiting is hard. This is hard work of frequent activities with very little feedback. So it's ripe for getting into our head, like, oh, is this really worth it? But it's the long game. It requires the long game, and it is a high repetition of proactive tasks with infrequent positive feedback. But that's what it takes to be a winner in this market.
What do you think the future of real estate has in store over the next little while? Because, we're filming this at the moment in October. The market at the moment in many different regions is very stagnant. There's a lot of people that are talking about the reality of that the election is obviously getting in the way of that. You've got interest rates and everything. I have my own theory that the listeners on Rethink Real Estate, if they are frequent to it, they definitely understand what my theory is, in the sense that I really do believe that inventory levels are at their highest they've been since COVID. In many of the marketplaces, you're just going to be dealing with more competition and more people putting their property on the market after the election. And once interest rates go down, that, even though you will have an uptick of buyers, you will see that diluted by the factor of inventory levels back up there, which again, it's not going to be anything historically normal, irregular. It's just going to be back to maybe pre-COVID volumes of inventory on the marketplace at any one time, and taking a little bit longer to sell, and all those different elements, and having to be priced competitively, and making sure that all the fundamentals of real estate are working for you.
Yeah.
What is your outlook on things?
Well, I follow Mike Simonson at Altos, and David Childers over at Keeping Current Matters. Both of those experts follow the market and have multiple sources of input. And what I'm seeing from all the different experts is at least a 10 to 15% increase in volume next year. That's a big deal. It's not back to where we were, but volume heading up on a national basis. That's a pretty good number. So that gives us some hope. That gives us some momentum. That gives us more opportunity to serve, and all of the things that go with it. So I feel pretty confident in those numbers from my own personal research, and I follow the St. Louis Fed and each of the Fed districts too, who are putting out pretty positive stuff. And then, of course, depending on the election and how we go, we could have some incentives for new home builders and building, which could be, we just need more building. If you look at the track of home builds, we just have a big deficit in that area. We haven't built enough homes to support the demand. And so this inventory crisis has got to get solved somehow.
Yeah. Well, I think that the other part that I'd like to get your take on, because of you out there doing it every day, what's the general I guess morale of realtors with the buyer side commission change? Because I've seen a lot of people that are like, oh, nothing's changed, it's fine. Then I've seen a lot of other people that, that are just getting decimated within deals where the buyer side commission is the first thing to be negotiated, even external to the price.
Yeah. From what I'm seeing, there's two types of agents today. Those that are confident in their abilities and can effectively communicate the requirements of the new world.
Yep.
And those that are still trying to justify a 3% commission. And the ones that have figured out how to move forward and effectively negotiate an agreement with a buyer are having great success. And I've talked to a few that the buyers refuse to sign the agreement. Well, what's the difference between those two agents? It's probably training.
Yep.
And their ultimate outcome. Is their ultimate outcome? I'm not suggesting that we all work for free, but I'm suggesting that if your outcome is to serve and to serve the client, and you're going to be appropriately compensated, or if your objective is I have to protect 3%, those are different things. It's kind of like playing not to lose or playing to win. They're different.
What real estate companies do you believe are winning at the moment in the recruitment game? Now, don't get me wrong, August obviously the lowest volume ever, but like it doesn't feel like, for example, obviously you being an independent consultant, you probably can't speak specifically to individual things. But if I was to give an opinion on things, and you can give me a general consensus around where you see things, is that I don't see Compass out there buying agents anymore. I don't see anywhere doing the same, because obviously they're struggling from a financial perspective. And again, I'm not to say that they're not doing that or whatever it is. I feel like there's a little bit of wind in the sails of the EXPs and the reals, but then that feels like it's sort of dissipated a little bit as well, because they're basically just cannibalizing each other from what I can see. They're not really actually taking any real market share away from the fundamental players.
Right.
Like you have the boutique brands like what we are within certain portions of the marketplace still doing well in their portion of the marketplace. I don't see a great deal of acquisition or expansion or anything along those lines. Where do you see the general industry at the moment? Like you've got the big companies losing lots of money still. You've got the small companies still breaking through. It just feels like a very odd, interesting time.
It's very interesting. You scared me there for a minute because I thought you were going to ask me some tough questions. This is a tough question, but I have a theme that I'll share with you. We're working with clients that are in a traditional high split model who are growing. We're working with some of those models that you mentioned that have downline components and they're growing. We're working with some that aren't growing, and we're working with boutique, local niche folks that are growing. The common element is not necessarily their fee structure; it's their support structure and culture.
Right.
Back to what those agents confirm for us. If you're with one of these firms that's, a virtual brokerage and you can't get support, it doesn't matter how good your fee is. You're going to lose them.
Yeah.
And we see that in some, whatever you want to call them, downlines that don't have the support they need. Others who have that support, in a sense, they're just as loyal as to their physical office manager. But we're working with a number of very large traditional firms that are full split, full service, who are growing. And you know why, Ben? Because they've got clear on what their niche is, what they're good at, what makes them unique and different versus these other models. And they're singularity of focus on that, trying to get everybody. So if I could say that in a better way, they get really clear on what they're better at than anybody, what their niche is, what type of agents would appeal to that offering, and getting hyper focused on how to be attractive to those versus how do I get these people that like this other model that is totally foreign to your model.
Yeah,
I don't know if that resonates or not.
well, it does. I think that it resonates. We have it's very difficult to get a business owner to get very clear on what they want and what their advantage ultimately is. But to give an example of that is that, as you know, Mark, we have a portion of our business that is external to Harcourts, that is our white label auction service that we go out to certain marketplaces external to where our Harcourts business is, and we offer them the auction process for a different fee structure and a different sort of way we do it. It's our opportunity to prospect external to those areas and get to know the agents in the middle of their deals, because an agent, the agent, what they look like from an exterior business structure perspective, and then understanding what they're like within a deal, it's two completely separate things. It is unbelievably separate. And the agents that, again, for lack of better terminology, piss me off to no end are the ones that are just so far away, arm's length away from their deals. Like, it's amazing how many people that are as successful as what they are without actually speaking to anybody. And that's the way they want it set up. Anyway, so
Ben, let me jump in one, because right before this call, I was on a call with a traditional office manager on the East Coast who was just hired, and she'd been an agent for 20 years, and now she's stepping into management. And she started the call with, "What we are good at is ... And I thought, okay, this is a manager who's going to be successful, because she knew what they're good at. And then she says, and what we're not good at.
Yep.
But we're good at these things. And there's a number of agents who want those things that they're good at. And she's going to go after them.
Yep.
And I thought, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
If we could put that in a bottle, Ben. Right.
But I think that's the point that I was going to get to and make, is that with our business external to Harcourts, is that we identified the agent that is in a particular type of brokerage, that has a listing on the market, it's exceeded X number of days, it might have had a price reduction, and that person is the avatar or the perfect person for us to reach out to in that moment, because they're not getting the support from their brokerage. They don't know what to say to their client because they've already done a price reduction, and they don't want to go back and ask them for another. And that average days on market is that listing, if it hits over, and these are different metrics for different areas. And where I'm going with that is that model and that person is not a one size fits all. The person in the Bay Area is different to the person in New York, who's different to the person in Florida, and South Florida versus other parts of Florida is different to each other as well. Who's different to Texas, who's different to Tennessee. And I think that there also is these micro marketplaces within people's fundamental area of agents that need certain levels of support: luxury, mid-tier, inland, coastal, major market, rural market, all these different things that we need to understand the different fits of those people and what they're looking for at those particular times, because your recruitment is cyclical as well, in my opinion, Mark, is that what agents want in winter is different to what they're looking for in summer.
Absolutely. And even, I'm so glad you brought this up. I believe it was Mike Simonson from Altos who brought up, there's 8 states right now that have more inventory than COVID. And there's a few states that have the same or less. Texas, Florida have more inventory. They're going to have different needs, and recruiting is going to be different in those geographies than, let's say, Northern or Southern California, where we're still pretty tight.
Yeah.
So this concept you talk about of micro markets, I think, is becoming even more important, not only for our agents, but for the recruiting and attraction function as well. Because like you said, the seasonality, winter is different than summer and fall. That's a good analogy, actually.
Yeah. And you look at it also, like, it's funny, the Arizona marketplace was horrific over the summer. What did I say to some people? I'm like, you might as well light your home on fire than try and sell it. It was just really difficult within certain price points in certain markets.
Right.
But now the market's changing a little bit because it's coming into its season, so to speak.
Right.
Versus on the coast, it's a little different. but then there's all these other things that we can talk about. But Mark, I guess that in closing, what do you think 2025 looks like from a real estate perspective? I know it's a pretty general question. It's a vague question, but I know we kind of answered it before, but 2025 looks like what for your business and for the industry?
I'm really hopeful for the industry and all of us that have remained and survived. Congratulations, because we made it through the storm, and we should see some tailwinds. At least everything I'm seeing, 10 to 15% increase in unit sales. That's good for all of us, and that's going to create opportunities not only for new agents coming into the industry. We haven't seen, and we monitor this, we haven't seen a change in new agents wanting to get in. I do some part-time teaching here in California, and the schools are full. Enrollments in real estate schools are full. They don't have an empty seat. And so, we have a way for them to help replace those who are retiring and exiting. And those that are in it that have survived are going to have, more volume to sell. So from a brokerage, that sounds good as well. And from recruiting, so I'm hopeful. I guess, if you said, what's my outlook for 2025? It's hopeful. Yeah, I think we've made it through to the other side, and we're on the uptick.
Well, Mark, we appreciate the work that you're doing and that you joined us back on Rethink Real Estate. We're going to have all your information in the show notes here before, but Mark Johnson, Managing Partner at Recruiting Insights, folks, if we need any help for your brokerages, for your teams, you need any assistance in the recruitment space, Mark's definitely your man. But Mark, we appreciate you jumping in and joining us on Rethink Real Estate.
Ben, thank you so much. And again, congratulations on your success and all of the success. You're, true servant leader, and I admire and respect that a lot.
Thank you, sir.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.